guys, what's up? Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/eggs show. That's EGGSSHOW. Audible has more than 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or just about any device you can imagine. As Eggs listeners, you can download a free audiobook today by visiting audibletrial.com/eggs show.
Bang ding ding, trademark. He come out 6'7" tall. Bang ding ding, 1 inch star. Bang ding ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding. This is a perfect day.
Woke up to the sound of the garbage truck again. Upstairs neighbor's toilet's leaking on my head. Cars broke down, I missed the bus that runs at 10. I had a feeling this was a day to stay in bed. I finally left my pad right on the jumbo's cloud roof. A police officer pulled out his gun and said, I said, sir, you got the wrong guy. I guess it's just a perfect day. It's just a perfect day. No, 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 no,
Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of Eggs. Today's guest is Damon Burton. Damon is the president of SEO National. He is a SEO expert and all-around internet kind of guy. I think we're going to get a lot of great information from him. We met him through LinkedIn sort of recently, and he was willing to give us a little bit of his time, come on the show. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and introduce our guest, Damon Burton.
Hey, Damon, how's it going?
Hey, it's good. Going good. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, not a problem. Thanks for making the time for us. Sorry for the weird snafu with the link, but we got that handled, so we're good.
Hey, I've been around the block. I know what happens.
Right? So can you tell us a little bit about SEO National, how you got involved with them, a little bit about your history, just kind of who are you, and yeah, break that down for us.
Yeah, so I started SEO National in 2007, so we're about 12 and a half years into it. So for listeners that might not be familiar with what SEO is, it stands for Search Engine Optimization. And the easiest way to understand what that is going through processes to get your website to show up higher on Google and other search engines for words that you can monetize. So that's what we do. Is it's a form of advertising. As far as how I got into it, if you go way back, I got into web design, and I started a little hobby site for car enthusiasts. And as the traffic for that grew, I said, how do I make this better? And so I got more into the aesthetics and improving my own personal skill sets in design. And then as that got better, I said, how do I monetize this? And so then I got into marketing. And so I was exposed to it just through my own exploration of my own sites. And then at some point I was like everybody you hear about. I was probably the kid that did really crappy websites that your friend's neighbor tells you about.
Raising your hand right now if you couldn't tell.
At one point in our lives.
Yeah, so I built up enough of experience on the side where I got a decent portfolio out of it and was able to start doing a decent job at it, and got kind of my first formal job in the web space, and did that for a while. And then when I made the jump and started my own company is when my side hustle was 50% of my income, but my day job was 80% of my time. And so I said, why don't I free up that 80% of my time and take the risk? And I took the risk, and it paid off quickly. I maybe only took about 2 months before I got that income back, but now I freed up a whole bunch of time. And then that was 12 years ago. So then there's a whole other story of how it's grown since then, but that's kind of the backstory.
So what were you doing before that? What was your day job that you let go?
My last job was doing web design in a very specific space for affiliate marketing. So I would do landing page design. I was the guy that would design the spam in your inbox. You would click on, and then you'd go to a page that would sell you like government grants or Viagra.
That's funny.
That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about it. So I know that for a lot of people, SEO is kind of a buzzy word nowadays. And I think a lot of people use it to mean a lot of different things. But back when you started 12 years ago, like it was still maybe kind of on the edge a little bit. Like that was kind of a new thought, or maybe a new way of looking at marketing online. Can you talk a little bit about, you said that you were drawn into it just for your own, reasons, but how did that work when you went on to sell it to maybe your first client? Like, what does your first sale look like?
I actually remember very clearly. It was kind of because the client is still a client 12 years later.
Wow.
So it was kind of, they took a risk on me and I took a risk on them. So the client is EMS Solutions. Back then they were PCB Solutions, and they do circuit board manufacturing. And so I did some design for them and redid their site. And then after a while, they said, let's do some paid ads. And so we did some Google AdWords. And then they said, what's up with this Google thing? And so we said, well, I know enough that I'll try it. And had some moderate success with them. And so they referred me to our second client, who is also still a client 12 years later, Speed Hut. Speed Hut sells car gauges, so speedometers and tachometers. And Speed Hut said, hey, EMS, at the time, PCB Solutions, said, you're working with them online and you're helping out, and it's affordable. And so I said, hey, it's that scope of things is kind of new to me. At the time when I started the company, it was just design. And so I said, I won't charge you anything, but here's the benchmarks. And if we hit those benchmarks, then you owe me retroactively. And so no risk for you. I get some experience. And 12 years later, them still being a client, I hope that implies that we had some success.
Yeah, it seems to be an indicator that something's working.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So pricing is always kind of an awkward thing to talk about, and especially when you don't have experience in the field.
Mm-hmm.
Developing a pricing structure for SEO, obviously you've got benchmarks, but is it per click? Is it per like an overall kind of, this is my time, or how do you put that together initially? That doesn't seem like something that would be that easy to figure out.
Well, it depends on your experience. So for me, it's very easy because we have very clear deliverables that we provide. So I'll answer it by pointing out the specifics you brought up and why it's not based on that. So It's not based on the click, because every industry is different, every market is different, and every market has a different market cap. So there's way more people searching for something super broad like weight loss than like whatever this cream is right here that takes care of like a very specific thing. And so whatever your thing is you're selling, there's either 100 people a month searching for it or 10 million people searching for it. So that's why it's not based on click. The way that we price SEO is specific to the client. So I personally don't believe in packages, and I'll explain why in a minute. So a lot of other agencies will do packages, and that's fine. If it works for them, that's fine. But the reason why we don't do packages at SEO National is because, in my opinion, that incentivizes. There's two reasons. The first reason is it incentivizes the salesperson, and I don't want to oversell a client just to take more money. The second reason is, depending on the client, they're going to choose the cheapest package. And I know that they are not going to get the proper amount of deliverables to get the results that they need. So I don't do it based on packages. So what we do is we base it on three things. So the first thing is, what is the product? So like I said, the weight loss example is a hyper competitive and it has a really broad market, or are you selling a little specific widget that has a smaller market? So the first thing is the product itself or the service. The second thing is what's the geographic or the demographic target? Are you a dentist in only a city? Or are you an attorney in a state? Or are you a brand nationwide? Or are you international? So city versus state versus national versus international. So obviously the broader you go, the more competition you're fighting against. Yeah. And so the last component that we base pricing on is, how good or bad is your website now? Do we need to rebuild it? Does it run on a search engine friendly backend like WordPress? Is it super old school and it's manually built and we have to edit pages one at a time where we can't make updates globally with the back end? So depending on those three things, for us, pricing is probably going to start out on a low end at $1,500 a month for a specific product in a specific market with a decent back end. And then it's going to go, we have clients that are 10 grand plus that are in really competitive spaces. And so they need more content, more links, and more this and that. So that's how we base it. But probably to add a little value to anybody shopping SEO, if anybody tells you they're going to do it, if first red flag is if they guarantee anything. There's so many variables in SEO that you cannot guarantee anything. And the more honest somebody says, no, I'm not going to guarantee you anything, those are the guys you want because they're telling you the truth. And the other thing is if they're going to say $90, $99 a month, $100 a month, it ain't going to happen. Just the logistics behind it.
Advice and stuff and everything you got to do it probably is more than that.
Yeah. I mean, just the logistics of the assets you need to create. I would say that for most industries, even if you're in a low competitive market in a very specific small town, you still probably need to pay $750 a month.
Yeah. So I guess then, so to sort of extend that, so when you're doing SEO, are you doing media buys also, or do you just do optimize the website and all that stuff so that it's most easily searched?
Yeah, all we do is organic, so we don't do any paid ad buys. So that, and we can get into the more specifics here in a moment if you want. But that basically boils down to A, fixing your site structure, making it load quickly, making it mobile friendly, and then B, the external credibility. So, do other websites talk about you? Do you show up in the news? Why should Google look at you bigger and better and differently than your competition?
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's smart, but I think it's good to differentiate. But maybe one of these things too that we could dig into a little bit is, like I said, SEO is kind of this buzzword out there nowadays, but do most people even understand what search is? And do you mind going into a little bit of what that really means? I think we all know the practical version of it where you sit down and you do a Google search or something like that. But I mean, what is really happening behind the scenes when we make a Google search?
Yeah, it's been really funny because that question has never come up until this year, and it's come up a lot this year. Probably out of the last 3 podcasts I've been on, it's came up all 3 times. So what happens when you do a search is that there's thousands of things that go on. So one of the first things is Google's going to say, "Where are you?" Because if you search pizza, you probably want pizza from where you're searching from.
Yeah, presumably.
So what is the closest location to you? So there's geographical things going on. Then there's also the industry is being looked at. So if you search, paper supplies, it's going to give you you're going to get a different result based on whether you're searching for a product or a service. And so the industry is going to provide different results. Your personal habits and search history is going to provide biased results. So there's
the person who's doing the search, not the person who's
right.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So depending on there are literally thousands of things that go on in that half of a second. That's kind of the really abbreviated version. As far as your other question about the market viability, and it's a kind of a buzzword, and it's been really funny because I think social media plays a big part in the difference in opinions and the viability of SEO. I think that newer generations or younger business owners, maybe 28 and younger, that they're really used to instant gratification of social media. And so they're kind of brought up in the mindset that a product of their environment is, I just want to buy traffic now. And so a lot of people, when they hear about SEO, it's interesting for me because I've been in it for so long, but they have almost no exposure and they're like, what? And so they go, a lot of times the first question is, right, so how much do I pay Google? And you're like, no, You're not paying Google anything. We're going to build your credibility and your brand awareness. It's a slower process, but has a bigger return. And so it's been really interesting that's really come to a point of discussion in the last year or two.
Yeah, no, that is really interesting. I think, like you said, and like we've been discussing, I mean, it's become such a buzzy thing that I'm often not sure people know. I mean, I run an advertising marketing agency myself, and so we do, a fair amount of SEO work and web development work. And I still run into clients all the time that, they say they want SEO, just like they say they want social media. They don't really know what it means, but they just know they need to. So they say, oh yeah, we need social. We got to have social. But, when it actually comes down to it, they don't even know what it really means.
Yeah. And as a business owner, whether it's SEO or anything, that's a great example of why educating your clients is really important, because not only do you get a better client, but they also help you help them, because they understand what you need to be successful.
Right. So walk us through an onboarding with a new client. Say, for example, I own a bake shop and I want to sell donuts, and I don't have a website. I don't have any online presence. What would you do for me if I wanted to hire you as an SEO consultant? Yeah.
So the first thing we're going to do is see if you're a good fit. And then we'll move on assuming you're a good fit. But, it's really important for me as a business owner not to take on every client, because I want to protect my reputation, and I want to provide good results. And so we probably turn down about half of the clients, the leads we get, because either, the logistics behind how much we need to do just doesn't make sense for them financially, which is fine. Or they're in a market where I don't think we can deliver results. So assuming that we move past that and it looks like a good match, then where we're going to start is we're going to audit the website. And so we're going to break down the structure and look at some SEO basics that, Google's going to look at how certain words are positioned in certain locations on a website. So we'll look at those. We'll look at how quickly the website loads. We'll look at it if it's mobile friendly or not. And then, SEO there's so many things involved, but you can kind of categorize them down into two buckets. So the first bucket is, what do you do on your website? And the second bucket is your external credibility, what's off of your website. So where most of your gains are going to come from, that second bucket, your external credibility, but that's only going to kick in if you have a solid foundation and you knock out that first bucket. So you make sure your website loads quickly. You make sure the structure is clean. You make sure that those little things are where they need to be. And then once that's done, for the most part, excluding ongoing content, that's like one and done. Like, unless somebody goes in and screws it up, you don't need to go back in there and tinker with the structure a lot. Obviously, some exceptions are, like I said, content, or if you're redesigning things, but the core structure should stay solid once you fix it. But then the majority of the efforts after that goes into external credibility and content. So you got to build up that reputation. If you want Google to rank you uniquely, then what are you doing to be unique? So you have to build that brand awareness. You have to get other websites talking about you, either sharing your content or getting into Google News or other respected outlets. So really, it boils down to a popularity contest, and there's only there's only so many ways to do that nowadays that actually carry weight versus 10 years ago in SEO, where you could just blast out a bunch of fake stuff.
So I guess sort of to that point, like, I mean, in your organization, do you guys actually do the content creation, or do you set your clients up with writers or whatever to actually do content? Or are you providing just the advice, like kind of this is what you need to do, and then you send them back with a list and sort of keep up on them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we prefer to do it all in-house. And that's been a process that's evolved over the years. So 10 years ago, when we were more on the budget end and maybe we were $500 a month, we didn't have the resources to do content efficiently. We could hire somebody, outsource it and just kind of do a semi-moderate job. But I didn't want to do that. And so at first we said, okay, we don't offer that component, so we're going to price ourselves accordingly and not be really expensive. Right. And the problem we ran into is at that point we would advise, and so we'd say, hey, you need to write content at least once a week, and probably write about these topics. And so we would focus on the external stuff. We fix the structure, and then we focus on backlinks and things like that. But then what we realized is we said, well, our client's busy running a business, and they don't have time to write content. Even if they are the expert, they don't have time, or some people don't like writing. So
yeah, not everybody's a copywriter.
Yeah.
That's where Ryan comes into play. I just
yeah. So we evolved after that. We said, okay, clients aren't writing, which is delaying the SEO progress, which makes us look bad. So let's start providing a content outline. So then we started saying, okay, instead of just saying, hey, write, here's a roadmap, and now we've drafted out a content calendar for you. Now go write. But then it was the same problem. They're still busy. So then we kind of flipped roles, and we said, okay, we're going to write, but you need to tell us what to write about because you're the subject matter. Well, that didn't work either. So as we got better and things evolved and we went through these processes, we said, okay, clearly we need to bring that component entirely in-house, because we need to have the manpower because the client's busy. We need to have a skill set of good copywriters, so when they do write, we can close that knowledge gap and represent our client efficiently and properly in their industry. And so we went through a process where we went through an evolution where we built out processes of how to write efficiently and how to write consistently and how to write for any industry, how to do the research and how to close that knowledge gap. So now we bring it all in-house just to make sure we deliver a good product.
Yeah, so it's nice. It's like a little bit of reassurance to make sure that what you're attempting to deliver on is met.
Right.
So when you write an article, say it's like 1,000 words or whatever, is there a recommended length? Is there a recommended platform where you should put it? Should you put it on every platform and link back to your website? Should you host it on your website initially? Like, what's the best way to do that?
So depending on the industry, it's going to vary a little bit. Kind of across the board, my take is as we don't get too hung up in the word count, because I think that takes away from the quality content that you can produce. Now certainly you want to have at least a moderate length, because just a couple hundred words isn't going to get you very far. But what we try to do is write what makes sense to write. And so sometimes that's going to be 500 words. And if we get the message across in 500 words, I'm not going to cram another 300 words on top of that just to get a certain length. And then it dilutes the message and reads like crap. So with that being said, we don't tend to focus too much on a word count, a specific word count. But nowadays, we've kind of evolved the process actually fairly recently. So historically, we would try and average about one blog per week per client, and the length of that content would fall somewhere in between 500 and 800 words. We started experimenting about a year ago on the length of the content and saying, okay, instead of doing weekly content, let's do it just once or twice a month, but twice as long, more researched, a very specific effort towards the structure. Do we put bullet points here or there? Do we put headline tags here or there? And so we came up with a formula on our content that we do, and the testing worked out really well. So in the last couple of months, we've been migrating all of our clients from a weekly process, a weekly content schedule, into once or twice a month. So way more longer form at a lower quantity, but because it's way more longer form.
Yeah, a little higher quantity.
So or
quality, excuse me.
Are you posting that on like Medium or a blog outlet and then linking to your website from that, or are you putting all the content on the site itself?
Usually it's on the site itself. Every once in a while we'll do we'll have another website that reaches out and says, hey, we like your content. Can you do some sort of guest post? And we've experimented with that. And I just don't see as many benefits as keeping it all on the website. And it's been interesting because I see a lot of people talk about the benefits of that. And I'll talk to a lot of my friends who are also successful entrepreneurs, and they might do a different form of marketing, like Amazon SEO, and so they work with a lot of product and text optimization on Amazon listings. And so I'll talk to them and ask about content structures. And just anybody I talk to that does guest posting, very rarely do they say they can quantify the benefits. And so we've kind of experimented less with that and doubled down on the on-page content on the client's website.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. That makes sense. So talk to us a little bit about, I guess, common pitfalls. So I'm sure you guys run into this every now and then. I know we do. It feels like the internet's been around forever, but we're still kind of, modern websites, modern technology, things like that are still sort of evolving. And so you mentioned earlier the SEO client that you might get where you've got to manually update every page and that kind of thing.
That would be my website.
What sorts of problems are you finding? And some of them will probably be related to legacy websites and things like that. But what are maybe the top 5 common things that you run into that are like most detrimental to search ranking or SEO in general?
Surprisingly, legacy websites and old static pages are not very common. It's us personally, we probably haven't taken on a client that's had a static website in 2 or 3 years. So the bigger problems we see are, one of the first things that comes to mind is kind of like shiny object syndrome. And so they're like, hey, we heard about this thing, let's do that thing. and most of the time it doesn't work, and it's just this new fad. And even if it does work, the SEO world they love to abuse things. And so they're like, yeah, it's working. Let's just beat the crap out of it until Google says that's not working anymore. And so it gets abused. Another common thing that we see is, like Wix or Weebly, these website builders. And I don't want to harp too negatively on them, but just from an SEO perspective, they're not that great. So outside of the SEO world, if you want to go build a free website on Wix, that's fine. It serves its purpose of getting something up quickly and for free or cheap. But if you're going to take that website and do something with it and invest money into marketing it, it's not going to work. And so a lot of times we have people come and say, hey, I already built a website. Now I want to optimize it. And so we're like, okay, well, we have to reverse engineer all these processes into it. And so you're basically going to have to pay twice. Right. So, not thinking proactively and into the future about what the strategy is as the website's being built out is a common thing where we have to go in and say, hey, sorry, we got to tear some of this stuff down.
So I found out from another interview we did a while ago, we've had a few SEO people on, but I used to take my website and at the bottom of it, I changed the text to black to match the background.
Yeah.
And evidently that's a bad thing.
Well,
so.
I think it was one of those relics of a bygone era, but that's awesome.
Yeah. It's funny, so maybe I answer the question this way. What used to be bad, and it's still bad, but you don't hear about it as much anymore, like things like that, keyword stuffing for sure, or what that was called was cloaking. And so where you just stuff things, like it just doesn't work. Some of those things where anything where you can easily, if the manipulation process is easy to incorporate, then it's also easy to detect. Yeah. So a lot of those things you don't hear about them as much anymore, just because most people know, but you do see it sometimes. One of the common discussions I have with a new lead is, hey, I did SEO before and it sucked and I got burned, and you came highly recommended, but I'm a little scared. And so it's a pretty common conversation where I have to go, yeah, you did get burned and here's why. And that goes back to what we're talking about pricing. You just can't do SEO for cheap anymore just because of the logistics behind it. So if you're going to try and think you're going to get ahead with any sort of cheap SEO solution, it's just not going to happen.
So how's your relationship with Rand Fishkin?
I don't have a personal relationship with him. That's funny.
Do you use those or any platform?
Over yonder? Yeah. No, I don't. But it's funny you mention it. So I met Rand last year, and I got this I got a picture of me and him just off behind me. But I met Rand last year, and he was a super cool guy, really nice. And what's also funny is when I met him, I bought his book, Lost and Founder. Yeah. And so I brought it and had him sign it when I met him. And but I hadn't started reading it until about 2 weeks ago, because not a big physical book reader. I got to do Audible, and so I finally bought it on Audible, and I'm just like, a couple chapters into it. And what I like about Rand's book is I'm very appreciative of the approach of just being transparent, and that's how.
Honesty. He's so good at that.
Yeah. So it's been really
story. And like, if you haven't listened to the book or read it, you should, because I mean, he's talking about like midnight stealing the desks out of his office and moving to a new location so he could keep going. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah. So it's been good to read. And I think you're right. Even if you're not into the SEO world, it's the book isn't, obviously he talks a lot about SEO, but it's not an SEO book. It's a business owner book.
And the hurdles and stuff that he had to overcome to get into it. But do you use any software like Moz or is it Moz? Is it
Moz? Like Moz, yeah. But we use one Moz product, Moz Local. But there's nothing wrong with Moz. We just have preferences for other software.
Sure.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about like common mistakes that people make. What are like, I don't want to say quick fixes, but what are like easily done things that people could do on their own before they engage a firm like you? Maybe save you guys a day or two of fixing up some of the rubbish.
Well, I'm going to divide that into two answers because anytime a client tries to help us, they screw it up.
So true. So true.
That is not. I saw a funny picture the other day that was like on it was on a glass window of a web design company over in Europe because it had pounds or euros and so dollar signs, and it said, "We build you a website starting at $500. We build you a website and you watch $800. We build you a website and you give input $1,500. You build a website on your own and we consult $2,500. You do everything on your own, $5,000."
That's funny. That's so awesome. True, though.
Yeah, it really is. So, but I guess if you had to give somebody like a couple pointers, I mean, maybe not everybody can afford you, or I think ultimately what they end up finding out down the road, and it takes some maturity and just business acumen, and eventually they get there. They find out, oh, well, if I had just paid for it in the first place, we'd be in a lot better position. But if somebody, has got a small website, they're starting off lean, maybe they got a little startup or something, what are a couple things they could do to, at least put their best foot forward?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of stuff you can do on your own. I just wouldn't blend the two. But if you're wanting to get a head start on your own, the content's going to be the easiest area to start because if you have some basic HTML knowledge, then I can advise. GTmetrics.com is a good site where you can go and look up why your page doesn't load very quickly. So if you have that experience to understand what information it's telling you, then go do some of those technical things. But oftentimes, understandably, people don't have that technical knowledge. So the next easiest place to start would be content, because you are the biggest expert in your space. And so if you can share that information, just like we're doing now, I'm not holding back any of my secrets, because the people that are going to best work with you, that most people aren't going to take action on the advice you give them anyway. So you're not losing anybody, but you are going to gain people because they go, hey, I could probably do that, but he's better at it, or I don't have the time, or he's right. So that there's no reason not to just give away the farm. And so when you can write about that information, that's going to be your easiest in. Now, if you're not a writer, you should still take that strategy and map out a content calendar and say, hey, you could use a website like iWriter.com where you can hire based, where you can order content a la carte, and then you can order it based on the quality of the writer. So you can say, I want to pay $15 for a so-so writer, starting at $25 for, they call it elite, an elite writer, or $30 for an elite plus, whatever. So you should still write, or at least strategize what somebody else will write on your behalf. And then kind of the last part of that equation, if you don't know what to write, then I got to sneeze.
Go ahead, man.
If you don't know what to write, then but you obviously have the knowledge because you're the business owner, and you just need help pulling the topics out of your mind, then use a website like answerthepublic.com. So you can go to Answer the Public and you can type in a word based on your industry or something that you think you might want to rank for. The example I always give when I mention Answer the Public is shoes. So if you sell shoes, you go in there and you just type in shoes, and it's going to spit out this chart, this graph that says the who, what, when, where, and why about shoes. What is the average woman's size shoe? What is the best selling men's hiking shoe? When should I do this for my kids with shoes? Like most bizarre stuff. Some of it is pretty obvious, but a lot of times you find really unique questions. And these are the questions that your audience is already asking. And so you can go create the content that answers those questions.
Oh, that's great. Well, so we talked earlier about, so you take this content and you're putting it on their websites and things like that. But what makes it effective? Like, is it just a matter of writing a bunch of words, or should we be tagging people or linking to things, or like, is there a way to strengthen the copy? You mentioned some structural issues, like, including bullets, things like that. Like, some of it, I guess, is making it more machine readable so that Google or whomever can jump in and scrape it. But beyond that, should we be sharing videos? Should we be posting, linking to other people's articles? Like, how do we build that sort of external credibility within the pieces we're writing?
So linking out doesn't necessarily bring an advantage, with the exception of if you're linking to credible related resources that support what you're talking about. So maybe you link to a Wikipedia article that supports whatever your topic is, then that can be beneficial. But if you're linking to your competitors with a similar product, then that's just only helping them, because every one of those links is kind of a vote in the popularity contest, and you just gave them a vote. So I would only link out if it points to data or supports whatever you're talking about. But I'm a big fan of repurposing your own content. So you write the blog, you write the content, you've already done all the research, you have a really good content topic. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel. Take everything that you've already put together and now make an infographic out of it. And then you have your text, and then embed the infographic below it. And the reason why that benefits you from an SEO perspective is because Google's going to say, hey, Damon's article is well-researched, it's long, and then he's also got other stuff in here too. And so you can do the same thing and do it with a video. Whether Google admits it or not, they're a little bit biased with YouTube rankings because they own YouTube. And a lot of times you can have multiple results on a search engine. So take your content, use it as basically a script to narrate a video, create some sort of video, and then now you have 3 pieces of content. You have your text, below that do the video, and then below that do the infographic. And then now you can have your URL, your page show up on Google, but then you can also have that infographic also show up in the same results in the image listings, and then also the video in the video listing. So you could have 3 results on one page, and all 3 of those assets are supporting each other to get the main page to show up too.
Yeah, no, I love that. In this sort of day and age of video too, is still the written word, in form of an article? Like, I love this idea you're talking about, sort of stacking the content. But if people are shooting, I don't know, live streaming, or they're doing video, things like that, like, is video an effective tool for SEO outside of just being like an add-on to something you've already written? Are we in a spot where Google is scrubbing our videos and pulling SEO things out of that at this point?
Well, video can serve its own purpose independently of what I'd consider traditional SEO. So you can have video as like its own independent marketing strategy where you just show up on page 1 with these videos. But yeah, from the technical perspective, Google will analyze the audio waves in a video file to try and detect the verbiage and what's being said in the video. So if you don't provide captions or whatever the caption text file is, they're going to still try and detect what's audibly being said in there, and then they can extract those keywords from there. So yeah, there is technical events happening now. That gets beyond my area of expertise, but yes, stuff is happening.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, no, I think that's really useful information.
So would you want to use the same text that you used to kind of build the video and put it in the comments on your, YouTube page and with the click back to your website, that doesn't the clickbacks actually help your SEO? So like if you have links referring to your site, it boosts your SEO.
Yeah. That's one of the main strategies is getting backlinks, but it depends on the backlink because that's where we get into talking about earlier, where you don't want to automate backlinks and do any of the old school strategies. Prior to 2012, Google came out with an algorithm update called Penguin in 2012, and before that, it used to be a quantity play. So the more links you could get, the better. But then immediately after that algorithm, it went the other way and it went to quality over quantity. And so we used to semi-automate our backlinks. So most other SEOs back then would fully automate. But I kind of wore a tin hat and I was like, well, if I can identify this pattern, Google certainly can. And so we would kind of blend it where we would manually quality control the potential resources that then later we would automate. And so when we would go through that process, we'd have a client where we do 500 to 2,000 links a month. Now, about a year before Penguin came out, for that same reason where I was like, hey, if I can see this, Google definitely can. I started saying, hey, we need to change our processes. And then a year later, Penguin came out. And so now what we do is it's an entirely manual process. And before, the amount of time that we used to put in to get 500 to 2,000 links, we'll put in twice that amount of time and we'll get 5 links.
Wow.
And so it's an entirely manual quality control process now.
What are your thoughts on using like Bitly or the shortened
the link shorteners?
Yeah. Is it beneficial to do that? I've heard it's good to track your, who's clicking on your link, but does that optimize SEO in the same time, or does it ruin it?
Anytime there's a redirect, because that's what's happening is when you use your URL shortener, it's loading a URL, and then the URL has a little mechanism that says, okay, after we load and we do whatever tracking we want to do, then go here. So at the end of the day, it's simply a redirect. So yeah, every time you have a redirect, and this isn't to say that tracking is bad, because tracking is obviously very beneficial, but every time you have a redirect happen in your sequence, let's say you have Bitly point to your own internal CRM, and then your CRM points to a long form Google Analytics URL, and then that finally hits your final destination. You got 3-4 redirects happen. Every time that happens, you're going to shave off a little bit of the value of that. What I hate this term, but they call it link juice. And so every time, like if you have a core link from A to B and it's worth 100% link juice, and then you throw in a redirect in the middle of it, now you're going to get, maybe 95% of the value. Then that redirects to another one. And I don't have any data to back this up, but my interpretation is that Google is obviously smart enough to understand that Bitly is a commercially used platform. And so they're probably not going to ding you as much for using Bitly. But if you have like your own bizarre random tracking domain, they're probably going to go, I don't know what's up with this domain. We've never heard of it, and it looks a little shady that the domain was recently purchased, and so it's new. Instead of shaving off 5% of that link juice, they might shave off 20%.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting because we use a lot of redirects in our marketing efforts and stuff. So that's an interesting perspective. I'll have to dig in a little bit, make sure I'm doing the right things. Oh, shoot. I totally lost my train of thought. Crap,
Sorry.
I had such a good idea, too.
Was it?
I'm sure of it. Yeah.
Or you just start rambling off stuff. We'll hit it.
Okay. Well, so I guess let's talk a little bit about, you've been really transparent with the conversation that we've been having so far. So maybe we could talk a little bit. You mentioned you called yourself an entrepreneur earlier. Clearly, you've been in business a long time. Can we talk a little bit about scaling your organization? So sort of moving from, little step to a little bit bigger step to bigger step. Was it in your trajectory? Was it just a matter of adding new clients over time? Or was there some big moment that you broke through? Like at what point did you transition from sort of being that budget provider to, having the confidence to raise your rates and really go big?
Mine's a bit of a hybrid. So I have very clear times where as a business owner, we made a strategic move. And then other times, it's been really interesting now that I've been in this for so long. and you get in these inner circles of other successful entrepreneurs, and then you hear their stories, or you do podcasts and you hear stories. And I've really started to be grateful for the uniqueness of my story and being able to get to where I'm at, because I haven't had any major failures. I've never went bankrupt. This is my first business, things like that. And so I'm really appreciative for that. But at the same time, I don't want to discredit the strategic moves and risks I made. So some of those, little blips on my timeline that I'd probably point out is I think it's really important for entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs to be okay with exploring. So what I mean by that is I'm 38 now. So when I was, I don't know, late teens, early 20s, I knew at some point, I didn't know, but I was very confident at some point I would do my own thing. I had no idea what that thing was going to be. And I was okay with that. And so I didn't get discouraged by thinking, what's my path? Like, I want to be somebody, but how do I get there? I just kind of let it evolve and see, experience what I liked and didn't like and identify those things. And I think sometimes people go too head first into, especially with social media, and they see these successes and you don't know behind the scenes what really happened for them to truly get there, or even if they really are there. And so I think some people jump in head first thinking I need to commit now to get to wherever. And they don't go through that self-discovery phase. So I think that's kind of like the start of my journey. Then we talked about how I started a hobby site, and that's where some of my experience came from. And when I made the jump, we talked about 50% of my income coming from the side hustle, but my day job taking 80% of my time. Well, at this point in the story, I was recently married, and I was recently married.
We lost you there for just like 1 second.
Oh, I heard me start going through an Inception echo.
Okay.
All right. So at this point I was newly married, and my wife would get up at 4 a.m. At this point, she worked at a hospital. And so she'd get up at 3 a.m. because she had to be at work at 4 a.m. And this is when I was kind of doing things on the side. And I said, I'm going to take the risk now because it's obviously going to suck to lose 50% of my income, but I can pay my bills. And I'm going to free up that time. So when I could identify that I could still pay my bills after cutting out all that income, that's when I was going to take the risk. And so that's when I made the jump, freed up all that time, replaced that income just 2 or 3 months later. The next blip on the journey was I was working at home, and that was cool. And so like that's where it was for like a year or two. And I was just happy to be self-employed and being in my early 20s. It's as simple as that. It was cool. And so I didn't really have any grand plans for the first year or two. And then after a year or two, I said, I should probably do something with this. I got a little more mature and realized that I have a business, whether it's big or small, I have a business. So let's treat it like a business. And so at that point, I had like one VA, one virtual assistant, and I had listened to Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek. And I don't often take away like books and embrace them and put them up on a pedestal, but there was little things that I took away from that book, and one of them was, why don't I have more VAs? Like, why do I got one VA? And so within 2 months after that, I had 4 or 5 VAs. Because I said, okay, let's sit down. And I think what a lot of business owners can appreciate is they want to maintain quality control, and so they're scared to give things away.
That's what I was going to ask you next, was because I've thought about having, hiring someone to reply to my emails and add stuff to my calendar so I don't have to deal with that minutia stuff. Mm-hmm. Did you run into any issues like getting them trained up correctly, or like translation issues or problems in that respect?
So they're only going to be as bad as the documentation you provide them. So if they suck, it's your fault.
Okay.
So, I've probably given away 90% of my day-to-day tasks to my team, but that last 10% are things like you mentioned that I don't give away. I don't give away my email because I want to maintain those relationships with my clients. And I think that depends on the business. Different industries, they can probably give away that a lot more easily than I can. But where my clients, my engagement with my clients are part of a really big picture, I need to know these little things.
Yeah. So like, just as an example, to go on the VA thing, we've had other people bring that up, but so not to derail the conversation too much, but what types of tasks are you delegating to those people versus what you might do with I don't know, like an in-house assistant? Like, what's the value of, I guess obviously there's some financial reasons to use the VAs, but like what sorts of things can you have them do for you?
Anything. You really can have them do anything. And it really does boil down to kind of what I joked about they're going to be as good as the information you give them. So the way that I approached it, which is also like one of these later blips on my timeline, is I had a VC group a couple of years ago interested in buying my company and combining it with another one and making this big marketing company. I ended up declining because it was like a gross conversation, and it was like car dealer slimy discussions. And but I learned two important things from that. And one of those things is the buyers want to know where the fire is and just pour more fuel on it. So where are all the leads coming from? And we just want to accelerate that. But the second thing is they want to turnkey business. And so they want to come in and just run with it. And so at that point, which transitions back into the VA question, is I said, okay, we have very clear processes, but some of them are over here in a spreadsheet and some of them are up on that whiteboard. So even though we had the processes, we didn't have them in a consistent location. So at that point, I documented all of our processes or organized them very formally. We use a CRM called Insightly, but there's a million different programs you can use. And so it took a year for me to go through and document all these processes, because if I was going to do it, I wanted to do it right, and I wanted to never do it again. And obviously we need to change it here and there as processes evolve. But I probably spent an hour or two a day, 3 to 5 days a week for a year, recreating every single process that we had, me personally, because back to your question, I wanted to guarantee that quality control. So as long as I documented it properly, and as long as my team read it, they couldn't screw it up.
Interesting. Right. So I've been kind of dealing with that right now. Like I signed up for a trial account at Monday.com and a few other ones. Are there any features in Insightly that you would, you prefer over other applications?
I ended up going with Insightly for a couple of reasons. One is because it had the ability to make in Insightly, they call it activity sets and pipelines, which are basically templated processes. So I can take 10 different tasks and group them into an action. And so I can push a button and all 10 of those get kicked out. Now, the reason why that was important for me, some other task management systems have that, but they didn't have this other thing, or they had this other thing, but not that thing. And so Insightly had all the things that I needed as a business owner, and those things are going to vary for everybody. So it was a combination of having all of the individual little abilities, plus I wanted it scalable, something that I could start with 2 or 3 users, but I didn't have to pay $500 a month for. And so Insightly was like $10 or $15 a user. And so it made a lot of sense for a startup business to be able to scale it without having to commit to an excessive amount.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'm like I mentioned, I signed up for the trial period on Monday.com, and I'm putting together, my sales pipeline and exactly what you just went through. And it's very eye-opening how much, you can kind of automate and set up and just get that done and not have to remember things. It just kind of, oh, there you go.
And that's the process, right? Is you then hand that stuff off to your VAs, and they can operate basically as a member of the company because they have instructions on how to do everything. So just give back to it.
There's another good book called E-Myth Revisited that a lot of people.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, the one thing that I took away from that book was to have your business dependent on processes and not employees. And I think
he uses that bakery, the fake bakery.
Yeah, the pie shop.
It's the pie shop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry
Yeah.
to-
Yeah.
I've read this
I know
book.
this
I
one.
don't-
Yeah. Well, I think what's cool about that that takeaway from the book is that as you grow a business, you are going to lean on the talents of your team, which you should. I mean, that's why you hire them, because they're skilled. But the problem you run into later is if they leave, that skill goes away, that asset from your company goes away. And so when you build a process, as long as you have somebody that meets minimum requirements for whatever that skill set is, you can replace that at an equal level of quality very easily.
Yeah, no, I think it makes perfect sense. But I think for a lot of entrepreneurs just getting started, this idea of developing processes, things like that, is often something missed, and so I think coming back to it and actually taking the time to sit down and do that, it sounds like you made a, very concerted effort to get that done. I think is really wise. A lot of people I don't think would do that, myself included. I've been working on it, but I'm not very good about it.
You got to get in the mindset. Nowadays it's second nature. If I do something and as I'm doing it, I go, hey, I'm probably going to do this again, I'll just document it right then.
Yeah, that's good
Smart.
thinking.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, hey man, we're starting to wind down, come to the end of this thing. I guess, are there any sort of key takeaways or anything that, you might want to teach an audience to help them understand why it is they might need SEO help in the first place, and then let them know how to get in touch with you guys?
Yeah, so I appreciate you guys having me on. As far as reaching out, I'll give a couple options. If you're on LinkedIn, that's my platform of choice. I drop a lot of free tips and tricks there. SEOnational.com is our business website. DamonBurton.com is where I blog about entrepreneurship and just life. And probably the last link I'll give out is I have a free Facebook group where it's actually free. Like I'm not trying to sneak in and tell you a course. Yeah. So if you go to ways2rank.com/Facebook, it'll redirect you to my Facebook group called Outrank. As far as maybe last giveaways, SEO is a slow process. Where SEO makes sense for listeners that are business owners is if you have disposable income that you can front the capital to invest in it without needing an immediate return. Most industries, at a minimum, you're going to be into it for 6 months. And so if you're paying $2,000 a month times 6 months, if you don't have 12 grand and that's going to take food off your table, then don't do SEO. And it's also it's not going to save a sinking ship. Like if you're needing quick sells because whatever's going on in your business, do paid ads. But if you have some sort of established business where you have the disposable income and you have the patience, SEO is usually one of the safer bets, but it only makes sense if you have those two things, the cash flow and the patience.
Yeah, I think that's really wise. And I think the, how to get those two things is another podcast all by itself.
Yeah.
So cool. All right, Damon. Well, we really appreciate your time. Thanks for doing this. We had a little bit of a technical snafu at the beginning, so thanks for your patience getting hooked up and getting onto the show. We're really grateful for your time. And any other parting shots? Anything else, Mike? Anything?
No, I think I'm good.
All right, cool.
All right. I appreciate the time, guys.
Thanks so much. Once again, the website.
SEOnational.com. Oh, hey, I do got one thing. SEOnational.com/free.
Ooh.
And there's some free. I just added this like a week ago, so I keep forgetting. So it's the same kind of thing. We talked about content. There's some free content calendars on there. It'll help you get a head start on figuring out what to talk about and why.
Excellent. No, that's really great advice. Thanks so much, man. Cool. Yeah. And for everybody who tuned in on the live stream, thanks so much. God bless. Thanks for supporting the show. As always, please support our guests. Let them know you heard them on our show, so they know that they weren't just wasting their time hanging out with us.
Yep. And you can like and rate our show on iTunes and then any platform you listen to.
Yeah, tell your mom. Tell everybody.
Tell your mom.
So, cool, guys. All right. Well, thanks so much, everybody. And Damon, thanks again for your time.
You bet. Thanks, guys. See ya.
Take care.